Even though PHP has a large number of built-in functions, you'll often find you need a feature that doesn't already exist. And if you're likely to use that feature often, it's a good idea to define it as your own custom function. So let's create a custom function to convert seconds to minutes and seconds. To define a custom function, you use the function keyword followed by the name you want to call the function. So function and then the name. That needs to follow the same rules as for a variable. In other words, it can't begin with a number and should consist only of letters, numbers and the underscore. I'm going to call it convert to minutes, and I'm using camel case there. Now you need to be careful that you don't choose the name of an existing function. I happen to know that this one doesn't exist, but it's common practice to prefix custom functions with a combination of 3 or 4 letters followed by an underscore. Again, you mustn't use a combination that's already in use, such as str, which is used for string functions. So I'm going to use lyn for lynda.com. So lyn underscore and then convert to minutes. After the function name, you need to add a pair of parentheses, and between those parentheses, any variables that you want to treat as arguments. And if you're going to use more than one argument, you separate them by commas. We need only one argument, which is the number of seconds. So we'll call it seconds. And then a pair of curly braces. And between those curly braces, you add the code that you want the function to run. We need to start off by getting the remainder by dividing the whole number of seconds by 60. That will give us the number of seconds that we've got left over. So we'll call that sec. And then it's the number of seconds that have been passed to the function, the modulus operator, and 60, which is the number of seconds in a minute. Next we need to get the number of whole minutes. We can do that in PHP 7 using the intdiv function, but the intdiv function won't be available if we're using an earlier version of PHP. So let's have a conditional statement to check to see if intdiv exists. So if, then the condition in there will use a built-in function called functionExists, and this takes as its argument a string which contains the name of the function that you want to test, so that's intdiv. If intdiv exists, we'll use that to get the number of whole minutes. So min equals intdiv, we're passing it the whole number of seconds to the function as an argument, and the second argument is 60, which is the number of seconds in a minute. That's fine if we're using PHP 7, but if we're using PHP 5, we need to do the calculation manually. So else, then another set of curly braces, and in there min equals, then we need to deduct the amount of seconds in the remainder from the whole number of seconds and divide by 60. Because division takes precedence over subtraction, we need to have the first part of the calculation in parentheses. So seconds minus the remainder and then divided by 60. So that will give us both the number of seconds and the number of whole minutes. But if the number of seconds is less than 10, we need to prefix it with a 0. And we can use the ternary operator for that. So we'll reassign everything to sec. Then the condition will be sec is less than 10. Then for the ternary operator, the question mark. If it is less than 10, we need to have 0 as a string and then concatenate the value of sec onto that. But if it's greater than 10, all we need to do is to reassign sec back to the same variable. So this is all the calculation that's going on inside the function. We need to return a value, and you do that with the return keyword. And we'll use a double quoted string, and it will be min followed by a colon. You can't have a colon in a variable name, so this will be a literal colon, and then sec. So we can now test our new function. What we'll do here is to echo, and we'll use our function lin convert to minutes, and we'll pass it, say, 547 as a value, and then save that and load this into a browser. And it tells us that 547 in seconds is 9 minutes and 7 seconds. Now we always need to test functions to make sure that we're getting the results that we want. Let's try this with a negative number. Just put a minus in front of 547, save and reload, and we immediately see that there's a problem. We've got the minus here, which is correct, but we don't want the minus in front of the seconds. To get rid of the minus sign, there's a built-in PHP function called abs, ABS, that returns the absolute number. In other words, it strips off the minus sign if a value is negative. Ideally, we should use it here on line 4, where we're getting the remainder of seconds. But that will affect the calculation if int div doesn't exist. So we need to add an extra line just before adding the 0. So a new line on line 10, and sec will be abs, and then we pass sec to it. So we're simply stripping off that minus sign. So if we now save that and reload the page in the browser, that minus sign has gone away, but it's kept here, which is in the correct place. When a function is used in the same file as its definition, it doesn't matter which order they appear in. We can call the function before its definition. So if I select the whole of this line 15, cut it to my clipboard, and then go to the top of the file, put in a couple of extra lines and paste it in there, save, and prove that I'm not cheating. Let's try a different number in here. What should we have? Say 605. Save that and refresh. That tells us that 605 seconds is 10 minutes and 5 seconds. So that is working fine. But this works only if the definition of the function is in the same file as you're calling it. In the next chapter, we'll look at working with external files, and if the function definition is in an external file, the external file must be loaded first before you can use the function. So all you need to create your own custom function is to wrap a block of PHP code in a pair of curly braces and use the function keyword and then give your function a name. If you need to return a value from the function, you use the return keyword. When creating a custom function, remember to test it thoroughly to make sure you don't get unexpected results.